create, how I create, and what they do, even if they bring the dead back to life. Could you be so foolish to realize that a created being can be a God? That's the trial for us. On Judgment Day, Allah will ask us that question. So why does Jesus speak in the cradle? You see, it's very simple. That's the hikmah of the Quran. This book is a book of hikmah. تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم. Jesus ﷺ is born without a father. That's the miracle of Allah. Now when Adam and Hawa were born without mother and father, there was no one to accuse them. But when you are born without a father and you bring a baby, there's a man hidden somewhere. No woman today can bring a baby and says, I was like Maryam, it's a miraculous birth. No, there's a man someplace. No, there was no man. This baby was born miraculously. No. There's a man somewhere. Because rationally, there's always a man and a woman when a child is born. So now when Maryam ﷺ brings this child, look at the baby first. أَلَّا تَحْزَنِي قَدْ جَعَلَ رَبُّكِ تَحْتَكِ سَرِيًّا وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِزْعِ النَّخْلَةِ تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطَبًا جَنِيًّا. Look at Isa ﷺ talking to his mother. Because she's saying, oh, this is so painful. This is so difficult. I wish I were dead. He says, no, don't be, oh mother. Look at a baby talking to his mother. SubhanAllah, that makes my hair stand. A child talking to the mother loves her so much and says, through me, this miraculous birth mother, put your foot in the river and cool yourself. And shake this tree and take ripe dates. Look at the wisdom of the Quran. Our Christian brethren say Jesus was born in the winter. He wasn't born in the winter. In the winter you don't have ripe dates. And by the way, all historians know that Jesus was not born in 25th December. It was another holiday. He was born in the summertime because he was born in the stables according even to Christian ideals. But look what Isa said. Now he's talking to this child, to his mother. She brings him now to the people. Now the accusation starts. Believe me, if you and I turn blue while we talk, there is no way under the sky this accusation can go away on a woman when she brings forth a baby who was born miraculously. Unless a miracle takes place, there is no way to counter this problem. So when she brings the baby, look at the argument. It's beautiful. It says, Ya ukhta Haruna, ma kana abuki imra'a sawin, wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. Quran brings that out. Puts it as part of the verses. What does it mean? Allah said, did you see? Even the enemies who are going to accuse her recognizes her family as pure. Ahlul Bayt. Notice that when you bring Ahlul Bayt forward, why is Ahlul Bayt so important? It's integrity again, because that's why we hold on to Ahlul Bayt. Notice that when a prophet comes and he leaves something behind, who's the closest that we're going to go look at the prophet? It's Ahlul Bayt. Here Ahlul Bayt the same thing. When they see Maryam, they say your mother and father were chaste. Notice her quality of greatness is hinging on her forefathers. Same as today. When we hold Ahlul Bayt, when we talk about Ahlul Bayt, what is it about? It's about integrity with the family that Allah is proving even in the Quran. That when Maryam brings the baby, they say your father and mother were good. Why does she have to be good then? Just because typically when you have good forefathers, you're a good child. Ahlul Bayt, don't forget this. So, فَعَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ, she points to the baby. He says, قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ الصَّبِيًّا. Quran brings it out. What does it mean? They say, how can we talk to a baby in the cradle? كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. What does Allah say? Yes, babies don't usually talk. Then the baby says, قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. They're stunned. آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حي وبرا بوالدتي. Allahu Akbar. Look at how Jesus is speaking. You will not find such verses on earth. Moral argument. When I bring this to my Christian brethren, I said either you are stunned by it or you are mesmerized by it, because there is no other way to counter this. That a baby is saying, I am a servant of God. Inni Abdullah. Notice, first, he doesn't say I'm the son of God, he doesn't say I'm God, he says I'm a servant of God, just like the Holy Prophet. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Not rasuluhu, abduhu wa rasuluhu. Isa says, قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب, I've been given the law. وجعلني نبيا, I've been made a prophet. جعلني نبيا. The word جعل means Allah appoints. You and I cannot appoint. جعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت. I bring good news wherever I go. وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة. I have been enjoined prayer and charity. And I have been made kind to my mother. والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا ذلك عيسى ابن مريم قول الحق. Now, when the people heard the baby talk, the accusation went away. There was no way to say Maryam indulged in any haram act. That is why Isa alayhi salam speaks in the cradle. Notice in this verse, every moral argument is brought forth. He's been enjoying prayer, charity, kind to his mother. Blessed is he that he is born. He's a servant of God. Aren't these the moral principles of Islam? This is why prophets are prophets. This is why we have to submit to the truth. No religion brings this forth moral arguments, pure moral arguments. So when we remember these people, when they suffered, you and I should reflect on them for integrity reasons. Why did prophets suffer? Evidence, as I mentioned the other day. Yesterday, I say that since prophets are chosen people of God, they should be the ones who least suffer pain, the ones who go through least amount of problems in life. Isn't it true? But look what would happen. If such were the case, then you and I would argue against Allah. That, oh Allah, you send prophets. They never had a problem. Look at how much problems I have. And you want me to be submissive to you? They had everything rosy. I'm the one who's suffering. So since I'm suffering so much, I am better than the Prophet. Thank you. That is why prophets and imams suffer the most in society. So you and I have no arguments. What else? Integrity. Because integrity comes when a person is in pain and that person doesn't give up their road to Allah. Allah says, did you see the integrity here? He says, because when you have problems, typically you run. They say a friend in need is a friend indeed. Why? I say, I have this friend of mine, I love him, and I'm ready to die for him. This is why. Because all my life, every time I had a problem, this was the friend that came to help me. Okay, that's valid, there's integrity. It's the friend that you call, sometimes says, no, I don't have time, today I'm sleeping, call someone else. You know this is not a good friend. So what is it all about? He says, love is directly correlated to the term sacrifice. That if there is no sacrifice, there is no love. And if you dare to say that I love, you better be willing to sacrifice, because these two words are inseparable. Now let's go to the love-sacrifice argument of Ahlul Bayt. That we talk about Fatima Zahra who suffered. She suffered from childhood. They say even as a young child, the Holy Prophet would go out when he would speak. In the Meccans, children were sent with stones and they would throw it on the Prophet. And while the Prophet is walking the streets of Mecca, they would pelt him with stones. And Imam Ali was a young boy, he would always guard him. When they would come, he would attack them. When they would attack, he would counterattack. He would throw stones back at them because they were hurting the Prophet. But historians say that when the Prophet ﷺ would come home, his feet would be bleeding. He'd have marks of blood from his forehead. Can you imagine the Holy Prophet bleeding? I can't imagine. To me, he's such a sublime individual that no scratch should come on him, because that's love. Love, like the man who said to the Prophet, when the messenger was about to leave, he says, I'm going to leave. This is my last year. Allah has shown me that I will no longer be among you. For Jibreel has come twice this year to review the Quran and to give it to you. And I'm going to leave. Does anybody have a right against me? Moral argument, brothers and sisters. Right. We borrow money from people, we have amnesia. Right? We backbite. We take rights away. When we backbite, we take someone's right away. Because we have harmed their integrity. Look at the messenger, complete man. This is why I love Islam. Complete religion. What does it mean? You follow integrity. You follow the principles this way. This is who you are. The Prophet of the highest integrity before his departure. He looks at the people and says, does any one of you have a right or a claim against me? or if I owe something, anything, say it now so I settle with you. Allahu Akbar, I tell you, I read a lot, different books, history, people. There were many good people on this earth, but no one can compare to these people. The messenger is persecuted by Meccans to the point where they have their daggers, they want to kill him, but he's worried about their wealth to return it to them. The same people who are going to kill him, he's worried about the amana that they gave him. Sadiqul Amin, that though they want to kill me, I will return their wealth. I have no justification to say that, oh, they are against me, they want to kill me, so I'm going to embezzle their wealth. I'm going to occupy their land. No, the Prophet never did this. This is why we're so blessed to have this great representation. Integrity. And the Holy Prophet is asking, does anyone have a right against him? And the man says, yes, I do. The Prophet says, what happened? He says, once you were on your camel, with your stick, you touched my back. The Prophet, by the way, never struck an animal with his stick, never. It was a symbolic thing, because he's the Prophet, he's the leader. Just like Musa had a stick, the Holy Prophet had a stick he would carry when he would ride an animal. So he says, you touched my back, now I want, also you hit my back, he says, I want to repay it. So the Prophet takes his shirt, and the man hugs it, he starts to kiss it. He says, my dream was to touch your skin, and to feel it, and to touch it, and to be honored to touch the greatest human being on earth. Can you imagine if you and I said, there's a footprint of the Holy Prophet, I want to touch that. Imagine the Prophet. He would come home bleeding. They say Fatima Zahra, as a young child, she would dress her father's legs. She would dress his blood, and she would cover it. Can you imagine the relationship of the Prophet looking at this blessed young child? Young, knowing that soon she will leave this world as a teenager, stressed, but bringing about a progeny that is second to none, that will become the reason for the human race's guidance. This is Fatima Zahra, Salamullahi. Her sufferings, I will talk about in the next 2 nights, some of the issues that she had to endure. Even, by the way, when the Prophet would go on the battles, she was the one who handled. She had a servant, as you know, her name was Fidda. Fidda, we call her a servant, but actually she was like a family member. By the way, slaves, quote unquote, we'll talk about slavery in Islam. Slave is just a title, by the way. In our Prophet's time, the Prophets did not have slaves by the name that we understand today. They were companions who came from slavery that he freed them through. You find Fidda was one of them. She became a hafiz of Quran, and she never uttered a word for the rest of her life till her death except the Quran. She would only talk the Quran. Imagine being a servant of Fatima Zahra and you achieved that standard. How was this master Fatima Zahra? How was this companion? Do you know how many of us, I go to Africa, I go to India, I go to Pakistan, I go to third world countries, when we have servants, I watch how people deal with servants. You, do this, cook, do this, don't sit here, don't sit there, do this. I said, this is not the sunnah of Ahlul Bayt. He said, no, if you deal with them nicely, they want more money. All about money. Huh? This is the nature. Imagine having a servant in your house where one day Fidda cooks, next day Fatima Zahra cooks. Which employer have you ever had in your life that gives you one day off for every other day? Which employer? Subhanallah. This is how she was. That was her character, her quality, that she would go to the well. She would take the water to feed the children. And to have those 4 blessed children and to prepare them for a very arduous task ahead is painful. But I conclude tonight with the story of her granddaughter. Her granddaughter, Sakina, as you know, is a very painful, to me it's a reflection. They say Sakina, alayhi salam, when she entered Damascus, she was on a camel, only a 4-year-old girl, but a red-haired Syrian was approaching her because, you know, it was cultural at that time that if you were seen as a slave, you were an object of pleasure. And they understood this. And their purity is so essential. Ahlul Bayt, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. We are purified with a thorough purification of Ahlul Bayt. So here's now Sakina on a camel, and she sees this red-haired Syrian approaching her. She starts to tremble. She looks at her uncle. And she says, her brother, and she looks at Zainab and she's disturbed. She says, so Imam Zainab says, why? She said, that man is approaching us. That's the kind of purity she had in her nature, that if a man approached her, they would look down and say, no, we are a pure family. It's a moral lesson, moral. Anyways, she was in prison. And they say that if there was one thing she missed the most was her father, Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Which 4-year-old doesn't miss their father? I have a 4-year-old. When I get a hug from my daughter, it kills me. When I remember Imam Hussain alayhi salam, that he had to say goodbye to her and kissed her, and he went towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that they say when the Sakina walked by her father's body, which was trampled by 40 horsemen, crushed, without a head, she looked at it. How painful does a 4-year-old, what kind of pain does a 4-year-old go through? But it's a moral lesson for us. Allah says, look at these people. Look how patient they were towards us, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards Islam. And look, they never complained. It says Sakina was in prison without a roof. During the day, they would be heated. During the night, they would freeze. For her dhikr, besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was my father, my father, my father, I miss him. Yazid, the drunkard, who heard this noise coming from that prison, said, what is this? This little girl keeps crying. Silence her. He said, she cannot be silent, she misses her father. So Yazid said, then give her her father. What did he mean? He says they took the head of Imam Hussain on a plate, covered, and they brought it into the prison. It's trauma, it's traumatic thought. His child is crying, and suddenly a prison guard walks in and places a plate. He says, here, give it to this little girl, she's crying too much. They take the plate, and she opens it up, and her father's head is there. Can you imagine the trauma of a child having to, this is the grandchild of Fatima Zahra, and she knew this would be happening. The Prophet whispered in their ears and told her, this is the waiting, this is what's going to happen. فَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. He said, this baby started to cry, hugged the head, kept talking to the head, talking about how much she misses her father. And then there was this deafening silence. Imam Zainab looks at her, Zainab looks at her and says, Sakina, wake up. They thought maybe she fell asleep. And she breathed in her last. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. She said, I have no reason for this world. And she died, and as you know, Imam Zainul Abidin digs a little hole in the same prison and buries her in there. My brothers and sisters, these stories that we reiterate at the end of these lectures is not a tradition. It's a good tradition designed precisely to ignite the spirit towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to give us consolation that these people sacrificed the most for us, and therefore we should turn in the right path. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma inna narhabu ilayka fi dawlatin karima تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم إن شاء الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله